What's up, guys? Um, Man, the first slate of games at MSI were honestly really great. Game I want to talk about is the big game, at least for me and for a lot of other North American fans and Western fans, which was EG versus G2, right? Um, and the first thing I want to say is that is the worst. Like, I don't hate Karthus, but that is such a terrible Karthus game, and I don't know why you'd ever last pick Karthus there, right? When we look through draft, we saw the Anivia pick. You have to think about Anivia's good into these mid-range champions. We need ways to deal with the Anivia on that team, and instead you picked Karthus, which generally you want Karthus as your only AP anyway, so it didn't make sense to have Karthus there. And Karthus is another mid-range champion who struggles into Anivia, so you just cannot pick yourself when you had what we needed was something to beat the Anivia. If you want, and not only that, but you had Samira, you had Nautilus, you had Aatrox, you had winning lanes that you needed to play for, and instead you picked a champion that is just permanently farming. And the only ganks for the most part you get are, you know, the ultimate, right? And you saw in the game, he even tried to gank top, and if it's a ganking jungler, that gank probably works. His Karthus, right? It's very easy for Gwen to get away from with no flash out of position. And the Karthus pick in general just didn't make any sense to me. If you wanted an AP jungle, perfect Fiddlesticks game. Like, then you have Engage, you've got CC. The dives bot Fiddlesticks, Samira, Nautilus, like, what are they? They literally can't do anything. But instead, what you got was a Karthus that could do nothing in the game and wasn't helping your teammates do anything in the game. So legitimately, whoever called for that Karthus pick needs to be fired unless Inspired called for that pick. And if Inspired called for that pick, somebody needs to sit down with him and say, look, there's no world in which Karthus should ever be picked here, and explain why. G2 won. They didn't look as dominant as I thought they were going to be, to be honest. Normally, NA teams, well, for one, were laning particularly well, honestly. To be fair, we had winning matchups, but the lanes were going pretty well. Obviously, JoJo versus Caps, it's going to be a hard lane for JoJo. He's not, it's his first time, and Caps is probably the second best Western mid laner of all time, in my opinion, after Perks. But, and and he's coming back into form, right? So obviously, it's going to be a hard match for JoJo. They got that early kill on him, but for the most part, I thought EG played really well, and I think the next game, if they aren't playing into that Anivia, because that's what really won them the game, we're going to see a much different match. Because in that game, the fact that they were even in the game at all was incredible. Like, they got that bot inhibitor with Aatrox Hullbreaker. It should never have happened. I don't know how G2 let that happen. The macro from G2 in mid game play was honestly a lot worse than I expected. And that's what really worries me. Also, their performance against Order was a little shaky. But because they had such a poor macro decision there where they ended up losing the inhibitor, and because they had the Anivia pick into five champions that could do nothing into it, and team that had to come into them, it ended up working. It was like a nearly unlosable game, but they really should never have been in the position. And if the team comps had been a lot more even, I think EG probably would have won this game, actually, because they set up a lot of good scenarios around objectives that they just weren't. But then they just ran into Anivia ult, and they just couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't get around it. They couldn't figure out what to do. It was literally impossible to deal with for them. But because they had that Karthus instead, which was incredibly useless, instead of something like, said the Fiddlesticks, you needed AP, it could have been Jarvan, it could have been Xin Zhao, it could have been Lee Sin, it could have been literally anything. Preferably something with more engaged to it. Could have been Zac even, because Anivia's immobile and that's how you beat her. And obviously, you don't want to get cut by Zeri, but it doesn't matter because you've got Nautilus for Zeri, right? You've already got the tools to deal with the Zeri at that point. Also, Danny on the Samira, not sure how much I liked it. Jack kind of talked about this a little bit, but Danny has never been the best laning AD carry. Like, the pop-offs from Danny have always been in the late game. He gets these pentakills. He's a really good mechanical team fight AD carry, right? His laning phase has never been that strong. And so I think that Samir is a weird pick for him, and it might just be better to go back to the hyper carries like the Aphelios after the Jinx has been nerfed, but you could still run Aphelios. You could still run other hyper carries, or even just not necessarily ADCs that need to be lane dominant and to stomp the lane like Samira needs to be in order to win the game. Because a lot of times the leads that Danny got was they were just funneling gold through team plays onto him, and then they knew that if he had that gold, he would carry the game, and that's really his strength. So I do wonder about the Samira pick versus just going back to actual hyper carries. Perhaps his interview afterwards, which was where he talked about the trash talk from JoJo, and he was spot on. I think he literally said that NA players normally come in and they already expect to lose. He basically said that in the interview, and that's the biggest issue with our region is that we think we're going to lose before we've already gone in the game, and that's why we lose. Like, so much of this is mental. It's crazy that they're going in with this losing mentality, and I think that even though EG still lost, even though Danny and JoJo don't have that losing mentality, in my opinion, they looked good, and I would not be surprised if EG took the next game. RNG versus Istanbul Wildcats game, which, I'll be honest, it was kind of a stomp. RNG looked really dominant. We've got to remember these are the defending champions, right? And all of their laners looked amazing. The mechanics looked amazing. I mean, the Turkish team was clearly outclassed. And this is one of the games that was really a stomp, and so there's a lot less to say about it. But they also, in my opinion, had the winning draft, right? The other team had to come into them, and they had a lot of ways to mitigate that. But because they had the range advantage, they still ensured that would happen. They had some good matchups. But yeah, it was really interesting that like how dominant that they were in that game. Like, it was like, I mean, there was one small mistake where they gave away a shutdown in the top lane where they got a little overeager, but for the most part, it was like a near perfect methodical dismantle of the Wildcats. Let's talk about T1. Honestly, first I want to say respect to the Vietnamese team, because wow, they played very well. Mechanically, they were very good. I thought their players were honestly better than I expected them to be, and they really took it to T1 in that game. I mean, I don't think there was any doubt that T1 was going to win. Really, I mean, a little bit, but I mean, and the main thing happened when their support, I'm blanking on his name right now, but he kind of threw the game. It's almost like the classic support and solo queue that gives and takes, but he obviously got the early shutdowns, the early kills, but the biggest throw he made was like Wukong was pathing down for a gank bot, and instead of just waiting for the gank, he goes in early, and clearly Shogun, the ADC, didn't want to go in, and he's like, doing his like stars like, I need to help because you went in, but also like, can't because I'm too low HP, and I went away from Wukong with his ultimate so I can damage during the CC, and he ends up just dying and giving away the shutdown, and that's like a massive turning point in the game, because if that doesn't happen, you just wait like a few seconds for Wukong to come around for the gank, like they're still probably going to fight that. Or if they don't, it's just obviously better because you're not gonna. It was a losing play without him, and he, from that point on, the Lucian, which was like out of the game, got back into it. So that was really unfortunate. But honestly, the Vietnamese team from Saigon really well played. Looked a little shaky. I thought they were going to win the tournament coming in, but after the first day, and it is the first day, and obviously there's the ping issues and everything, but it doesn't look as wrapped up as I thought it was going to be. I thought if they played RNG now, I think it would be a close game for sure, and I think RNG might win. Although by the end of this tournament, I still think T1 will win. Once they've ramped up and gotten used to the ping a bit more, I think they're more likely to win. But for now, yeah, it looks like it'd be a close series with RNG in terms of G2 and EG. They looked behind. They looked, in my opinion, they still looked behind, but man. What I will say about the T1 game is, as an NA fan, the Korean announcer straight up like mentioned LPL and EU teams and just straight up ignored EG and NA. They like acted like we weren't even a major region, which is crazy because not only did we outperform EU in Worlds, but like, we're a major region. We're memes aside, we are nowhere near as bad as the minor regions, and for the most part, we perform as a major region should. We've made MSI finals fairly recently, right? You know what I mean? So we technically outplaced Korea at MSI before, I guess. So I don't know. CLG beat SKT in groups. Like I don't know. Um, it's a little, little disrespectful, but you know what can you do? We're just gonna have to prove them wrong at this tournament. With the T1 game is the draft, right? Like it looked like an ego draft. Like I'm not gonna lie. Like it really looked like an ego draft. Like obviously that Lucian Nami Blind. I think they were trying something with Yuban and Auto Leona, who are two very good picks into Nami, and then you pick it. But it's still like a bit of an ego. Um, Vi into Wukong. I've played that matchup from both sides quite a bit, and I really believe that's Wukong favored. Like, and the obvious, right? Vi can't Q him ever because he just W's the Q every single time, right? And that's Vi's main damaging ability, especially in the early parts of the game. So it's and even if she tries to Q one of your teammates and you're nearby, you can knock her up with the ult. Like I think it's a pretty bad matchup. So it's very interesting that Owner opted into that. Although I do think Vi is pretty decent in the meta right now. I think it's going to be T1 first, RNG second. I'm going to go EG third after today. I'm going to go EG third and G2 fourth, but it could be a bit of copium. We'll see. And let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in the next one.